War is not hell. Hell, I figure, is at least organized. War is just a machine for grinding men, designed by people you'll never meet. It's a string of pointless tasks in places you can't pronounce. The worst task isn't taking a pillbox, it's handling the replacements. They're ghosts in clean uniforms. They exist to catch the bullets meant for men who matter. My name is Sergeant Arthur Cole. They call me Grizzly. I've been in this since Kasserine, and I know only one truth. Experience keeps you breathing. We were in Aachen, October 1944. The first German city and the Krauts were fighting for every single brick. My platoon, or what was left, held a collapsed department store. For 3 days, we'd been trading fire with SS across the Strasse. The rain was cold and smelled like cement and cordite. I was in the cellar cleaning my M1 when Lieutenant DeWitt came down. He was new, a West Point man who still thought this was a map problem. He informed me we had a replacement. Behind him stood the new ghost, maybe 19, skinny. His uniform still had the factory creases. He smelled like soap. My assessment of him was immediate and negative. Private Thomas Wells from Chicago. I stood up. I asked him if he knew how to dig. He stammered, called me sir. I told him I work for a living. I took his rifle. It was unfired. I asked if he'd ever shot it outside a range. He said he'd qualified as marksman, a paper target man. I shoved the rifle back at him. He almost dropped it. I yelled for Tex, my bar gunner, to come get the new man. Tex was a lanky, quiet cowboy. He came to the steps and spat. He just grunted when he saw it was only one. I told Tex to put Wells on the north window and to make sure his rifle was pointed out. The kid, Wells, just stood there, waiting for more instructions until I barked at him to move. He scrambled up the stairs, tripping on an ammo can. A city kid. I wondered what he was good for. Dodging streetcars? I had 3 veterans left. Tex. Preacher Barnes, who carried a Bible and a K-bar, and Doc Cohen, our medic, the bravest man I knew. Everyone else was new, which was just a short step from being wounded or dead. This kid Wells was worse than new. He was a liability, the kind who fires at shadows and gets everyone killed. An hour later, I went up to the 2nd floor. We had a view of the Kaiserplatz, a square of mud and burned-out panzers. I found Wells. He was standing 3 feet back from the window, trying to look out without being seen. I hissed at him, asking what he was doing, and yanked him forward to the brickwork. He whispered about a sniper. I told him, of course, there were snipers. That was the point of a city fight. I explained he couldn't see his sector from the back of the room. He had to get on the window, low and to the side. A sniper waits for a real target, not a sliver of a helmet. He was pale. I pointed at his feet. He was standing on loose plaster, making a racket. I told him every sound he made was an invitation to the Krauts. He carefully moved his foot. After a long silence, he whispered a question about when we ate. I couldn't believe it. I threw my K-ration at him and told him, we eat when we're not shooting and sleep when we're not moving. I asked if he had any more stupid questions. He said no. I moved to Tex's bar position. I muttered that the kid was a mess. Tex rumbled that this one was just shinier than most. I told him the kid had asked about Chow. Tex almost smiled. Then he told me to listen. I heard it. The high-pitched whistle, not ours. A German mortar, or worse. I yelled, incoming! Tex and I were flat on the concrete instantly. It was a Nebelwerfer, the screaming Mimi. The rockets hit a block away, shaking the building. Then came the 88s. The first one hit our corner. Crack boom! The air filled with concrete dust. I did a roll call. Tex, Preacher, Doc all sounded off. I heard nothing from Wells. I yelled for him. No answer. I crawled through the dust, not worried about him, but about Doc having to expose himself to save him. I found Wells. He was still standing, frozen, hands over his ears, mouth open, paralyzed. A second 88 screamed in. It was going to be close. I didn't think. I launched myself, hitting him in the legs, and drove him to the floor, covering him with my own body, just as the shell blew the window frame and the wall inward. Shrapnel and bricks stung my back. The ringing in my ears was deafening. When the dust settled, I pushed myself up. The kid was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. I hauled him up and slammed him against the wall. I roared at him, my voice raw. I told him if he ever froze on me again, I would shoot him myself. I would not die, and my men would not die, because he was scared. He was a liability, a burden. He just stared, tears cutting through the dust on his face. I shoved him again and ordered him to find his rifle and get back on the blasted-out window. The radio crackled. DeWitt was ordering us to fall back to Rally Point Baker. I told the men to grab their gear. I told Wells to stay so close he could smell me, and that if he fell behind, I'd leave him. We went out the back, through the cellar. We had to cross Sniper's Alley, a 30-foot open space. I sent Tex first. He made it, then Preacher, then Doc. I told Wells it was his turn. I told him to run and not stop. He bolted. He ran straight up, not low. A perfect target. A Mauser shot cracked the air, hitting the brick by his head. He yelped and dove into a pile of garbage, halfway across. A second shot splintered the crate he was hiding behind. Tex yelled that the kid was pinned and laid down covering fire. I told Wells I'd cover him, to move on my count. I was going to have to run out and get him. I yelled, "3!" and stepped out, firing my Garand from the hip. I screamed at him to run. He scrambled out, but he ran back to me, diving at my feet, sobbing that he couldn't do it. I kicked him off. Tex laid down another burst, yelling at me to get over, that the kid wasn't worth it. I grabbed Wells by his harness and literally threw him across the alley. He landed in a heap near Tex. I dove in right after, the sniper's third bullet whining past my ear. We were all in the crater. Tex looked at Wells with cold disgust. He quietly told the kid that if he ever ran back again, he would shoot him. We made it to the brewery, a flooded cellar, 30 men looking like drowned rats. I saw Wells trying to talk to Preacher. Wells was shaking, saying it had been close. Preacher didn't look up from cleaning his knife. He just muttered a line from the Bible about the wicked fleeing. He told Wells that fear was a sin and he was a sinner. Wells moved away and sat alone. He pulled a letter from his helmet liner and read it. I watched him, the soft city kid. He was thinking about home. He wasn't here. To be here, you have to forget home. You have to become an animal. This kid couldn't do it. He was still human. That meant he was already dead. I went to Lieutenant DeWitt. I told him flatly that Wells was a liability and was going to get someone killed. DeWitt just looked tired. He said we were all liabilities. He talked about Patton's Third Army being heroes while we were just grinders. I told him I didn't care about Patton. I cared about my men. The kid froze. DeWitt just stared at his map and told me to make Wells useful or make him dead. He didn't care which. Our new objective was at 600, a push against MGs and that sniper. And Wells was going. I went back to my corner. Make him useful or make him dead? I looked at Wells, still reading his letter. Useless, a complete and total burden. I figured tomorrow that sniper would solve my problem for me. I couldn't wait. We spent the night in that flooded cellar. Sleep was impossible. At 0500, DeWitt kicked his crate and gathered us for the briefing. He pointed at his map. The Ludwig Fabrik, a textile factory, was the Kraut command post. It controlled the intersection. We had to take it. DeWitt's plan was simple. A frontal assault across the kill zone at 0600 under a mortar barrage. First squad, my squad, was the assault element. I told him it was suicide. That sniper would gut us. The barrage would just tell him we were coming. DeWitt's face tightened and he asked for my better plan. I looked at the map. The Hotel Imperial, the tallest wreck on the block, had a perfect view. It was the most logical and most dangerous observation post. I told DeWitt we needed eyes on that sniper. He sarcastically asked who I was sending. I turned and barked for Wells. The kid stumbled over, terrified. I grabbed him and shoved the map in his face. I told him he was going to take a field telephone and a spool of wire, climb that hotel, and find the sniper. He'd be our angel in the sky. He trembled and asked if he was going alone. I sneered at him, reminding him he was a marksman and a city boy who liked tall buildings. Tex shook his head. Preacher closed his eyes and prayed. Doc Cohen just looked at me. He knew I was sending the kid to die. Wells fumbled with the wire spool, his hands shaking. I slapped them away, buckled it for him, and tested the phone. I pushed him toward the sewer tunnel we'd used. I told him to go, to stay in the shadows, and not to make a sound. I told him not to call unless he had a location. No calls because he was scared. He looked at me with pleading eyes, then disappeared into the blackness. The wire spooled out behind him. I didn't expect to see him again. I waited a minute, then turned back to my squad. My voice changed. I told them the kid was a distraction, a ghost. If we were lucky, he'd draw the sniper's fire. Our real plan was to go underground. We were going to mousehole our way through the connected cellars. Preacher had the demo charges. Tex was on point with the bar. I'd take the rear and the phone just in case. Preacher set the first charge. A dull thump, and we were through the wall into the next cellar. A wine cellar. Tex went first, fired a short burst into the dark. Clear! We followed. This was real urban war. Crawling through rat-infested filth. We moved to the next wall. Set the charge. Thump. Tex went through. Clear! A butcher shop. Hooks hanging from the ceiling. I looked at the comma wire still paying out at my feet. The kid was still moving, or had been. I found myself thinking about him. He was soft, a symbol of the world we'd left. I pushed the thought down. It was war. You sacrifice the weak to protect the strong. He was a piece to be sacrificed. Preacher held up a hand. He told us to listen. I heard it. A faint scritch-scrape. Digging. On the other side of the wall in front of us. Tex eased his bar bipod onto the rubble. The digging was close. Tex whispered they were mouse-holing too, coming this way. We were being hunted. The digging stopped. A terrible silence. Then a new sound. A metallic clack-clack. The sound of an MG-42 bipod being unfolded. Preacher's eyes went wide. He breathed that it was right on the other side. They knew we were coming. I realized it. DeWitt's assault was the diversion. We were the real target. They knew we'd use the cellars. This was a pre-sighted ambush. A trap. We were boxed in, go back, and the sniper gets us. Stay here, and the MG-42 rips us apart. My smart plan had just walked my squad into a meat grinder. I looked at the phone. The line was taut. The kid was irrelevant. He was dead. I picked up the handset. Dead air. Preacher, I whispered. Get the last demo charge ready. He asked what we were doing. I told him we were blowing our way up, into the street, into the sniper's view. It was better than dying in this hole. I'd sent that kid to die for nothing. His sacrifice was as useless as his life. We were all going to die right here. We were in a box. My box. I had built it with my arrogance. The silence in that bakery cellar was a physical weight. Then a muffled thump from the other side, their demo charge. I screamed at my men to get back. K-R-A-boom! The foundation wall vaporized. The shockwave knocked the air from my lungs. The world went black, filled with choking dust. And then the sound. The hysterical, tearing shriek of the MG-42. Roar! Tracers cut through the dust, and ricochets screamed everywhere. I yelled for Tex to fire. The deeper bradap-dap of his bar was an answer. He was alive, dueling the MG's muzzle flash in the dark. I crawled forward, yelling for Preacher. Doc Cohen's voice came back, yelling he was over here. I found him with my cracked flashlight. He was crawling toward Preacher, who had been closest to the blast. He was on his back, eyes wide. Doc scrambled to his side. He screamed that Preacher was alive, but hit bad. His leg. The blast had taken his leg off. I tried to order a retreat, to pull back to the last cellar. Tex yelled back that he couldn't move. He was pinned. Every time he stopped firing, the MG swept the room. Then a clunk. A steel hand granite. A potato masher. It rolled into the middle of the room. I lunged and kicked it. It flew into a corner and exploded, vaporizing a stack of barrels. I crawled to Doc and Preacher. The beam found them. It was a nightmare. Doc was trying to get a tourniquet on Preacher's thigh. He was crying, sobbing that he couldn't stop the bleeding. that he was out of sulfa and large bandages. Preacher's eyes found mine. He had the 1,000-yard stare. He whispered he was cold. I told him he was fine. I yelled at Doc to stop the bleeding. I roared at Tex that we were dragging Preacher out on 3. Tex shouted back, his voice tight with fear. He was on his last drum. The MG-42 stopped. The sudden silence was terrifying. Clunk! Another grenade. It landed right at Doc's feet. He looked at it. He looked at me. He didn't have time to move. He just shielded Preacher with his own body. I lunged, grabbing the grenade. My hand was slippery with Preacher's blood. I tried to throw it back. It slipped. It fell right back onto Preacher's chest. I just stared at Doc's wide eyes, at Preacher's calm face. The explosion was a hot, wet thump. It threw me back. I pushed myself up, deaf. Doc was on top of Preacher, unmoving. He had taken the blast. He was dead. And Preacher, under him, was also still. Tex was staring, his face a mask of horror. The Germans in the next room were shouting, laughing. They were getting ready to finish us. Us, me and Tex, 2 men, one with half a drum. I looked at the useless field telephone. A wave of black hatred for myself filled me. I had traded my men for this hole. I told Tex, in a dead voice, to get his bayonet. I picked up the shattered handset one last time, a prayer to a dead wire. I cranked the handle. Nothing. I threw it against the wall. Tex whispered they were coming. I raised my grand. Tex stood up, bar at his hip. And then, a new sound. Faint. Far away. Crack. A car 98K. It came from outside, a German scream, surprised. Crack! Another shot, another scream. The Krauts in the next cellar stopped, questioning. Ein Scharfschütze? A sniper? Then, silence. A pause. Ping! My head snapped up. I knew that sound. An M1 Garand, clip ejecting. It came from above, from the direction of the Hotel Imperial. The Germans next door heard it too. They went silent. Brrring. The sound was tiny. Brrring. Brrring. The bell on the broken telephone was ringing. Tex and I just stared. It was impossible. Brrring. The Germans were shouting again to destroy the phone. I lunged for the shattered handset, found the speaker, and jammed the 2 bare copper wires against the terminals. I screamed, Wells! A burst of static. Then a voice, faint, shaking and breathless. Sarge! Sarge! I see him! Time stopped. I was on my knees in a grave, my squad gone, holding a broken phone, and the bell rang. I jammed the wires to the terminals. I screamed for Wells. His voice came back, thin and terrified. Sarge! I see him. I couldn't process it. He was alive. The kid I sent to die was alive. I demanded his location. He spoke, breathless, about being in the Hotel Imperial, about climbing the lift cables. I screamed at him to shut up, that we were trapped, that Doc and Preacher were gone, that it was just me and Tex. We were finished. There was a pause. He breathed, No. Sarge, I can see them. Not the sniper. I can see them. The ones in the cellar with you. I froze, he went on, his voice faster. He wasn't in the hotel. He'd lied? The hotel was too obvious, a trap. He'd used the sewer pipe but taken a different fork. He was in the collapsed apartment building behind us, on the 4th floor, looking down. He hadn't just followed my stupid order. He'd thought. The city kid knew a trap. He said the building's floor had collapsed, giving him a view. The blast had blown a hole in the German ceiling. They didn't even know he was there. He could see them, all 5 of them, crowded around the hole into our room, laughing, a crate of potato mashers at their feet. A chance. A 1 in a million chance. I asked how many. He confirmed 5. I yelled to Tex that the kid was alive and above them. Tex's eyes widened. I asked Wells if he could shoot them. He said it was dark. The hole was small. He only had his rifle and 2 grenades. I told him to drop a grenade. He said he could, that it was like dropping a nickel in a sewer grate back home. But he hesitated. He said the real sniper, the one he was supposed to find, was in the Ludwig Fabrik. 3rd floor, 4th window. He'd been watching him. The sniper was good, just waiting. The moment Wells made a sound, the sniper would see the flash and pin him. I told him to forget the sniper. The 5 Krauts in the next room were the problem. He had to drop the grenade now. I looked at Tex. I told him, "That factory, 3rd floor, 4th window." Tex scrambled to the original blast hole, said he could just see the top of it. I ordered him to fire everything he had at that window, to make the sniper duck, to give the kid a chance. I didn't care if it was his last drum. Tex stood up, exposed, and roared, his bar exploding in a long final burst of grief and rage, tracers smashing into the distant factory. I screamed into the phone, "Wells, now!" I heard a faint chink over the wire. Then his voice, not from the phone, but from above, a high-pitched scream, "Grenade!" A clunk as it landed in the next cellar. Shocked German shouts, "Foom!" The muffled explosion was followed by a massive secondary blast. Boom! Black smoke blew back through the hole in our wall. Tex lowered his empty bar, his face slack with awe. "Holy God! Grizzly!" He hit their ammo crate. The laughing, the MG-42, all gone. Wiped out by one terrified kid. The silence was total. I snarled at Tex not to just stand there. They were broken. We were going in. I shoved a fresh clip in my Garand. Ching! I told him we were taking that gun. I ran through the hole, Tex right behind me. It was a charnel house. The MG-42 was a twisted pretzel. The crew was gone. I looked up. Far above, through a tangle of rebar, I saw a dark shape. I yelled up to Wells, told him he did it, that we were clear. He replied, but his voice was panicked. He thought the sniper saw him. He said Tex had stopped shooting, and the sniper had looked right at him. My blood ran cold. Crack! A Mauser shot. From a long way away. The shape in the sky flinched. "Wells," I whispered. His voice was a gasp. "Sarge, I'm hit." He set his leg. It hurt. He was dropping the phone. The line went dead. I roared his name. I turned to Tex, yelling we had to get him. I stopped. Tex was leaning against the wall, holding his side, a dark patch spreading on his jacket. He coughed that the sniper was fast, that he'd fired back when the bar ran dry. He'd been hit. I scrambled to him, telling him he wasn't, not him too. He slumped down the wall. He said it was bad, in the gut. He was done. I told him to shut up, that I was carrying him. He just gave a faint, bloody smile. He called me a stubborn bastard. He told me to go, to get the kid, the little city mouse. He said the kid had saved us, that he was one of us. I yelled I wasn't leaving him. He grabbed my jacket, his grip like iron. He told me not to let them die for nothing. He pushed me. Then his hand went limp. I just knelt there. Frozen. Doc. Preacher. Tex. My whole squad. Gone. I was alone. I looked at the hole in the ceiling. The kid was still up there, wounded, hunted by the bastard who had killed Tex. It wasn't grief I felt. It was cold. It was black. It was rage. This sniper had taken everything. I was no longer a sergeant. I was an executioner. I picked up my Grand, 3 clips, 24 rounds. "I'm coming, kid," I whispered. I ran back through the hole, over the bodies of my men, back into the cellar that had been our tomb. I wasn't retreating. I wasn't attacking. I was going hunting. I was alone. The word made no sense. An infantryman is never alone. He's part of an animal. My animal was dead. My squad was gone, butchered because I was arrogant. I knelt in the smoking cellar. Tex was slumped against the wall. Preacher and Doc were still mounted near the blast hole. No, I wasn't alone. I looked up. The kid. Wells. The burden I'd sent to die. He was up there, wounded. Crack! The Mauser shot chipped the concrete near the hole. The sniper was trying to finish the job. The rage became a cold, simple focus. This wasn't about the war. It was about a debt. "I'm coming, kid," I croaked. I grabbed my M1, Texas 45 magazines, and ran. I scrambled back into the bakery cellar, into the mouse hole, and into the building behind. I climbed the waterfall of rebar toward the sound of gunfire. I yelled for Wells. His voice was weak. He was up there, but pinned. Zing! A bullet ricocheted off the rebar near my head. I rolled onto the fourth-floor landing. He was there, propped against a chimney, his own belt used as a tourniquet on his thigh. He was pale, shaking, but he was holding his M1, aiming at the factory. He gasped that he thought he'd hit the sniper. I crawled to him, my voice rough, telling him he did good. The sniper's next shot tore through the air where I'd been. I grunted that he was fast. Wells panted, his voice distant. He said the sniper wasn't just fast. He was waiting. He was bait. He compared it to a shell game on Maxwell Street back home. The guy making the noise is just a distraction. The real threat is the one you don't see. He said the sniper wasn't the main game. My head snapped around. The kid wasn't delirious, he was analyzing. He was seeing the setup. I asked him quietly what he saw. He said the sniper was the distraction, there to pin us and make us call for help. He pointed to the factory loading bay. In the shadows, he'd seen the sun glint off a long barrel. Not a tank. An anti-tank gun. A PK-40. It was aimed at the middle of the street, waiting for DeWitt to send the rest of the platoon into the open. It was a slaughterhouse, a trap for the whole company. I stared. The kid was right. I'd come up here to save him, and he had just shown me how to save everyone. I heard DeWitt's whistle. Fwee, fwee! Second squad was starting to move. Wells gasped that we had to warn them, but the phone was broken. DeWitt's radio was useless. There was no time. Wells said, Then we stopped the gun, Sarge. His face was white, but his eyes were hard. I told him the sniper was the spotter, the key. I asked if he could shoot. He looked at his leg, at his shaking hands. I didn't ask about his leg. I asked if he could shoot. He took a breath. He nodded. Yes, Sergeant. I propped him up. I took my last full clip and pushed it into his hand. 8 rounds. I jammed my own M1 into his arms. I told him that window was his problem. He didn't have to kill the sniper, just keep him busy. He chambered around, clack chunk. He asked what I was going to do. I looked at the factory. I'm going to fix the real problem. He tried to stop me, saying the sniper would cut me in half. I told him the sniper would be busy with him. I had Texas 45 and 2 grenades. The math was bad. He grabbed my arm, his eyes clear. He told me about the sewer. The pipe he'd taken had forked. The left fork ran under the street, right under the factory. It came up in their maintenance bay. I stared at him. The soft city kid. He hadn't just found the sniper. He'd found the PK. And he'd found the route. I put my hand on his shoulder. You keep him busy, Wells. Yes, Sergeant. And kid, don't die. I slid back down the rubble, into the sewer. The water was waist deep, ice cold, thick with filth. I held the 45 and grenades over my head. The only sound was my sloshing and the distant crack from above. Wells was firing. I moved faster. I was under the street. I could hear DeWitt's men running on the pavement above. Crack, Wells again. Good kid, slowing his shots. I saw the iron ladder. I climbed, silent. I heard the German gun crew, triumphant, waiting for our men to enter the kill zone. I put my shoulder to the grate. Screech. Was Wardass? I burst out of the floor, coming up from the filth. I was in a mechanic's pit. 10 feet away was the PK-40. The crew of 3 stared, shocked. I threw the first grenade. For Doc! I screamed. It landed in their open ammo crate. Boom! The loading bay flashed white. I was up, out of the pit, firing the 45. For Preacher! Blam! A German officer! Blam! A rifleman! The PK was a smoking wreck. I ran through the smoke, firing. For Tex! Blam! Blam! I burst onto the street. Lieutenant DeWitt was flat on his belly, stunned. I coughed, tasting smoke, and told him the AT gun was gone, that the ground floor was clear. I told him to get his men in the factory. Now. I didn't wait. I looked up. The firing from the apartment building had stopped. No. Kid. I ran back across the street, my arms screaming. Shrapnel. I didn't care. I ran back up the rubble. Wells! He was slumped over. His M1 was on the ground. Kid? My voice broke. I touched his shoulder. He stirred. He was breathing. He was alive. He whispered, asking about the street. I told him it was safe. We did it. He managed a weak smile. He said he got him. The sniper. His last shot. I knelt in front of him. This city kid. This burden. He had saved me. He had saved the entire platoon. He'd seen the trap that I, the veteran, had missed. I didn't know what to say. Thank you wasn't a word we used. I just unclipped my canteen, I uncapped it. I held it to his lips. Drink, I said. He drank. I heard boots below, the medics. I told him they were here, that he was going home. $1 million wound. He looked at me. We did it, right, Sarge? I just nodded. Slowly. It was all the thanks I could give. We did it, I said. I picked up his rifle. I turned and looked back at the factory. The fight was moving inside. The war was a long way from over. But as I walked down that pile of rubble, my squad was gone, but I wasn't alone. I finally had a soldier I could trust. The soft kid from Chicago,